Hey there, and welcome to the Dynamics Hot Dish Podcast, serving up stories and knowledge on Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. This is What's Hot in Dynamics. You're now joining Merlin Schweiger, Liz McGlennon, and Ashley Steiner.
Ashley, how many states have you been to?
I've been to 45 states.
How do you know how many states you've been to?
You've never counted, like, the number of states that you've been to?
I have, but I don't remember.
Were you drunk when you've been to those states?
No, it was one of those, like, stupid Facebook games or something. I don't know. It was a while ago.
Well, yeah, but, like, how do you not know that you were in a state?
Well, I know, but I'd have to, like, go through and count them over again. I don't just have the number off the top of my head.
Oh.
Do you have, like, a map on your wall or something of marking off all the places you've been?
No, but, like, I just know that I've been to 45 states. Like, this is, like, a normal, like, I shouldn't say normal conversation, but, like, it's just a conversation you have with people, and you're like, oh, I've been to 45 states.
Merlin, do you know how many states you've been to?
No, I'm actually thinking, how quickly could I count them, and will it take away from the rest of the podcast? I could not count them fast enough. Maybe by the end, I will have gone through and counted them.
This does make me think of that game, though. Like, can you list all 50 states under 5 minutes?
Absolutely, in alphabetical order.
Oh, I don't know if I can do alphabetical order.
50 nifty United States. 50 nifty United States. That song? No, you guys didn't have to sing that in elementary school?
And the next thing is like something about like from the 13 original colonies.
Oh, yep, shout
You also have to remember that I went to elementary school on an Indian reservation. So.
Okay. Fair enough.
Fascinating.
But yeah, anyways, you have to sing every state in alphabetical order, and I just never forgot it. It's just drilled into my brain.
Right,
the things we learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you know what song I'm talking about, Merlin.
Of course.
You're going to have to sing it for us sometime, Liz.
Yeah, but not on the podcast.
What are we talking about today, Liz?
How do you pick the right partner is our topic for today. So my first question for you guys is, when do you know if you need a partner? Because not every company or project works with a partner or a consultant.
Well, and you should probably define what partner means, right? Because there's an ISV type partner, and then there's, I guess, what do you even categorize a partner that comes in and does implementation?
Consulting services.
Yeah, so there's two different kinds of partners that you can work with. Vendors, partners. How would you guys define the difference between the two?
I guess I would say one is product first and the other is services first. Right? So the ISV will come in with a product and then they might help you implement the product. Whereas a consulting partner or an SI or a VAR or any of those other names will come in services first. They're there to sell you hours, and implementing things is sort of the secondary portion.
And some companies do both.
That is true. I mean, as a partner, my own self, I would say you should always at least have a partner on call in case you run into trouble. But I'm curious to know what you guys think about the sorts of projects where you don't need a partner, because nobody calls me for those.
Yeah, so I guess as like on the end user side, I've been an administrator or senior manager. Like the kind of projects that you can do internally, or is if you have the internal resources to handle them, or if you have like the development team to do an integration, or like for myself, you know the product and the functionality that you're going to use, and you wouldn't need the partner resources to be able to do that. I think that as the Microsoft platform grows into Power Platform, into the Power Platform space, I think that is getting smaller. That your dependency on the partner sphere is actually getting bigger, because as an admin, there's just no way that I personally can even know all the capabilities, especially things like Power Automate. I know we're going to talk about that later, and my passion for how I feel about Power Automate will come out. But like, how like I can whip up a workflow in 5 minutes or less, depending on what I needed to do. But, if I need automation through Power Automate, I probably need to go to somebody who has more development expertise than I do. So I think that it just really depends on what you're trying to do and who you have internally that can fulfill those needs. So I think that that's when you would need to go to a partner, or the sustainability as well. So if you're building something that needs, needs us, somebody to maintain it over time, a partner might be a better option to maintain that.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I agree with Merlin. Like, even if you don't need to rely on a partner for a project or a lot, like use them regularly on a, significant basis, just having some relationship, like a support contract, like just someone you can go to if you get stuck, have questions, have something come up. But also hopefully, you've selected a partner that provides education and kind of information and training, and they can help you keep up to date on the updates and the new things and provide content, hopefully. So at a bare minimum, like I would recommend having some sort of relationship there, even if you're not actively, engaged in a project with them.
But the perspective that you mentioned is actually really interesting, because you said as the Power Platform gets bigger, the reliance on partners goes up, which I feel like is sort of in direct contradiction with how Microsoft seems to be pushing it, which is, oh, citizen developers, like you guys will just figure this all out yourselves. And I feel like from the Microsoft messaging, it makes it sound as though they're trying to get rid of partners altogether.
No,
And yet-
internal teams can't keep up
Yeah.
with it. It's too much new stuff, too fast. Like partners have a hard time keeping up with it, to be honest, right? And consultants. So, and that's their full-time jobs, and they have whole giant teams of people working on it. So how would an internal team ever stand a chance on understanding the full Power Platform and being an expert in all the different components of it and staying up to date? It is a full-time job.
I completely
It's a
agree.
great point.
And
It's pretty interesting.
I have fully disagreed with the messaging from Microsoft on this. I mean, I am obviously bought into the Microsoft tools, right? Like I use everything that Microsoft puts out, Teams, OneNote, everything. But the messaging of what they're saying of like how you can start to do all this stuff internally, like there's just no way. Like it's just, me in a lot of the instances when I, I'm working at an end user company, you don't have a team of people. Whereas like a partner has, like Liz said, consultants, and you have BAs and you have developers, there's this team of people there and ready to support you. You don't have that in an end user company, and there's no way that to be able to keep up with it, that an admin or a BA at an end user company would be able to keep up with those kinds of changes and be able to continue to support their company just as one person.
I will make the argument too that I know, Ashley, it's just you, but I've worked with plenty of organizations that are larger and have big teams supporting Dynamics, and they're usually really busy with enhancements and like ongoing work and projects. So even a team of 10 or 20 or 30, an internal team usually still has a partner that they're working with.
That's true.
Okay.
It's just an interesting point.
So let's say you decide you need a partner, and we aren't trying to convince you of that or anything. That's your decision. How do you pick the right partner for your organization?
Ashley, would you like to take the end user perspective first, or shall I try to give the partner perspective first?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. I saw your face change, Merlin. So I can go first. So I guess what I look for, or when I go through this process, and I've done it plenty of times, I've worked with a lot of different partners, is I always look for somebody who meets the personality of my company. That's one of the first things that I look for. And I know that kind of sounds like, how do you quantify that? But I kind of list out the qualities of what my company is. So, what is my company? How do they work? What do they look for? What style of work do they do? And then I kind of put that into a grid, and then I look for a partner who's willing to meet those qualifications. So if we have a style of working internally, like whether that be agile, or do we do certain style of meetings, or do we require partners to attend meetings internally, or do they have to give a report every weekend or by the weekend, or you know what I mean? Like if we require a certain thing of a partner, are they willing to give those kinds of things? You know what I mean? If they're willing to work with us in that kind of style and meet our personality and meet our qualifications. So through that conversation with them. Those are the things that I'm always looking for, because not every partner is willing to, kind of sacrifice their standard to meet ours. So those are the things that I look for initially, just through those initial conversations, like how flexible are they willing to be to meet our qualifications. And I think that you can kind of tell those from the get-go, from those first initial conversations.
Do you
Yeah, that's probably
feel
true.
like there's any sort of commonality amongst partners that are more flexible to adapt to your organization's process? Like, I'm thinking, is it small versus big, or, established versus startup? Like, is there anything like that that you've noticed, or is it really just varies per partner?
That's actually a really good question. And no, I have not noticed like commonalities, but although I've never tried to look for them. So I'm sure if I sat down and tried to look for them, I'm sure I could find them. So that's actually a really good question.
That's a really
I should
interesting
probably do
question.
that now that you've asked.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, it would be very interesting.
Follow-up
Yeah,
podcast.
definitely a follow-up podcast. Merlin, what about you? What are things that you find?
So from the partner side, and I'm trying to think about this in not just in terms of, like myself, or how do I or the company that I'm working for win business, but more like broad scale, right? Because I feel like I get to see how different partners sort of compete in the marketplace. And I feel like I'm trying to think, how would a customer know if the partner is just blowing smoke, or if they actually mean what they're saying, right? And I feel like that's a little bit tricky, because obviously part of the sales process is you make yourself sound amazing, right? Like, oh yeah, we can do everything. Oh yeah, we'll meet you where you are. Oh yeah, we can do all this stuff, right? I think one of the things that I know lots of companies like to look for are like customer references. And I actually think that the references themselves are maybe less valuable than the fact that they have them, right? Because I don't know that it actually does that much for you to talk to a reference, because I, as a partner, am only going to put people in my reference program who are going to say nice things about me. But
Yeah.
if I have more than 3 customers who will say nice things about me, that's good, right? Like, that shows I have an established base of happy customers. It doesn't actually matter what those customers will say, because they're all going to say good things, because I'm not going to put the angry ones into my reference program, obviously. And I feel like there's sort of having the references is good. And I think also a lot of partners have some sort of kind of reputation in the community. And this kind of gets back into like trying to get involved in the Dynamics community, and maybe getting involved in local user groups and going to events, virtual or real, and networking with other people who are similar to you. Like, if you run a lawn care company, then you find other people who run lawn care companies. What was your experience? Like, which partner did you use? Were you happy? Were you not happy? And I feel like that's a good way to gain a little bit of insight. I think a lot of it does, like you said, actually come down to, like, is it a personality match? And obviously, the people that you meet in the sales process and the people that you're working with on the project aren't always going to be the same. But I feel like you can sort of tell a personality of a company based on the representatives that they send out. And yeah, I think a lot of it kind of comes down to something an old boss of mine used to say: people buy from people they like. And so if you like them, if you seem to get along with them, then probably they'll be a good partner, because if nothing else, when you call them with a problem, they'll be interested in solving it for you. And that's a big part of being a good partner. Um, just because they're the lowest price, that doesn't actually mean that they're going to care if you call and say, actually, guys, can you do me a solid?
I agree. I would really encourage people not to just make the decision based on the lowest price. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the cheapest outcome for you in the long run. Doesn't mean you're going to get the highest quality solution necessarily. And Merlin, I agree with you that, like, culture wise, I think even though the salespeople are going to be different than your project team, you can get a vibe for culture, definitely. And I think paying attention to how the partner treats its consultants, its employees, is important. Because if the consultant is not happy for whatever reason, they're not going to deliver as good of a project, a deliverable, a system for you. So looking at culture from that perspective too, I think is really important. And you don't want to work with someone that has like a lot of high turnover either. That's not good. You don't want new people on your project all the time.
Yep, it's true.
So I can think of one, like, example from like just the past that I have worked on, a situation. So a lot of people are, this one situation that I had, they brought a lot of people into the room. And so it made the company that I was working for, they brought so many people into the room. It made us feel really important, like, this partner really likes us, or they think that we're an important customer, even though we're a small company or whatever, because they brought a lot of people. But, it was a show, in my opinion, don't always, don't always fall for like maybe the tricks or things like that. We ended up choosing, a different partner in that situation because that did not bring a lot of people, because the personality of the other partner that we did choose, I mean, they just meshed with us a lot better. There was a connection. We walked into that room and you could tell from the first just couple of conversations and sentences that involved that conversation, there was just a personality match between us and the other partner. And it was fate, so I think that, really focusing, I think that we've all kind of hit on that, is the personality. You'll kind of just know when, and again, it's the salespeople, you're not going to work with them the whole time, but guess what, when things are going poorly on the implementation, or if the things go poorly, hopefully they don't, that salesperson is still going to be the person that you're going to talk to. That salesperson is still the person that you can reach out to at any time. They're going to have your back the entire time. So I think it's really important to always kind of focus on somebody, or talk to somebody, or work with somebody who matches your personality at the company.
Actually, I just have to say it's funny that you said when things go poorly. At first,
I meant if.
Yeah.
They're not gonna go poorly. I shouldn't say that.
There are usually at least a few small hiccups, though. Like, not like it's never perfect, right? It's never like completely 100% smooth sailing. So I think, again, like having a partner that you like, that likes you back, and that's willing to help and work through things, like, does help when things might get a little bit rocky or tough at points in time, even if it's overall a good project.
And I think that that's a good call out, because like you said, they're not always going to go perfect. Always expect something to go wrong. Choose somebody that you're going to enjoy talking to in that moment that things go wrong. Don't be like, oh, things are wrong, and now I have to pick up the phone and call somebody that I don't want to talk to. Right. That there's nothing worse than that situation. I hate to say it like that, but there are partners where I've enjoyed calling the person and being like, hey, guess what you guys did? Or like, you just dread making the call because you didn't want to talk to the person and you're just mad about what happened. So it really choose on the personality. It helps a lot.
Yeah, if everything is sunshine and rainbows by the time you get to the end of your project, that just means that somebody hasn't brought up the issues that have actually occurred. Like, we're all just pretending it's not there. Although I have to wonder, I feel like this is a good segue. If we're focused so much on the personalities in your partner, what about RFPs, where you don't actually get to talk about personality? As a partner, I will say I feel that RFPs are a terrible waste of everyone's time, both mine and the customers. But
I totally agree. I think they're idiotic. I've done them from a customer and a partner perspective probably hundreds of times. They're stupid because a lot of them, you don't get to talk to each other. And it's like a time crunch, and you're just filling out a ton of like general questions and answers. And usually when it's RFPs, I feel like you're looking at cost, and it's in a situation where, due to the industry, like maybe you're government or you're a highly regulated industry, you need to get multiple bids. And you might already have one that you want to pick, but you just need to get multiple bids to say that you did. So those are the two times I see RFPs done the most is either multiple bids or cost. But they're just not a good experience for the customer or the partner, in my opinion. And I don't think they help you pick the best partner, and they completely ignore the personality aspect that we've been talking about.
That's how you really feel, Liz.
I have nightmares of responding to RFPs.
Yeah, I know, Liz, you and I have on the customer end have done an RFP together.
Yeah.
So that one I still have nightmares about, and that was
Me
what,
too.
like 9 years ago.
Yeah, and do you remember how we actually came down to the decision? Do you remember, like, with all the RFP responses in, how we ultimately made the decision?
It didn't have anything to do with the RFP.
No, the VP of sales like knew the guy.
Yeah.
He was friends with him, and so we went with a company that we already had a relationship with anyway,
and had the personality match.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Kind of. Well,
the
one salesperson had the personality match with the
But all the time writing the RFP, the reading the responses, scoring the responses, all the meetings, we could have just skipped all that and ended up in the same spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've only done a couple of RFPs in my life. I've actually tried to avoid them at all costs because of that experience Liz and I had back in like 9 years ago now. Makes me feel really old to say that. But yeah, so I just don't find them to be helpful because it ignores so much of the untouchables that you have with a partner. How are they going to respond in situations when things don't go right, or how are they going to react when things do go right? I just think that it's all the hard things that are that are obvious, in my opinion, things that you can ask along the way in the sales process that you don't necessarily need them to write down. You can ask all those questions along the way. It kind of just takes your time away for having to write up the whole document, in my opinion, and then their time and attention away from actually connecting with you on a personal level, because they're taking the time to fill out the RFP rather than sitting in a room or on a virtual call nowadays. It just takes that kind of personal touch out of the whole sales process, in my opinion.
I've responded to a lot of RFPs where they don't even let you talk to the customer. So you're providing an estimate without ever having a conversation directly with them. You are not going to get an accurate estimate in that scenario. It is impossible.
And that's the challenge from the partner side, right? Like, sort of setting aside the relationship stuff, which actually, as you guys were talking about this, I was like, this would be sort of like trying to find like a mate just through an RFP process. Like, okay, here's the questionnaire, like fill out all these answers, and based on the responses, I will choose my lifelong mate. Like,
you don't think that's kind of like a dating app, and then you meet them and you realize, like, I am not compatible with you at all? Like, it's just like equivalent.
But assume that you don't have the meeting them part, right?
Right.
Like, you're just like, I'm committed. Like, this is like a episode, season 6 of Love Is Blind. Like, fill out the form, and then you just get married.
I was gonna say, there's lots of TV shows that where this is actually successful, guys. So
right, successful. I'm gonna do the air quotes on the successful there. But so getting back to Liz's point about not getting a good estimate from the partner side, when I get an RFP and it says, "Can your software do this? Can your software do this? Can your software do this?" Right. First of all, I feel like that's violating. It's violating the objective we were just talking about in our last podcast about focusing on the outcomes, right? Like, I have no idea what you're trying to achieve with any of this functionality, but you're just asking about functionality, which suggests that the customer is now defining the solution that they think that they need in the technology. And from the partner perspective, I don't know what the goal is. And because I don't know what the goal is, I can't say, yes, I can do that, but you shouldn't. Or, yes, I can do that, but it will take more work because you need to get to this goal. Or, yeah, that's super easy and out of the box. Like, I don't know, so I end up just saying, can I do that? Sure, I can do that. The Dynamics platform is infinitely flexible. I can say yes to everything. But does that tell you anything as an end customer? Of course not. Like, okay, I can do it. And then I get to the end, and I'm like, okay, they asked if I could do all those things. Is that actually what they want in their project? Am I supposed to estimate to do everything that they said? Or is that just like, well, half of this is future state, and we really just want to start with something else? Like, it's impossible to know.
Merlin, when you're talking about like the functionality questions, like, can it meet X specific functionality? are you thinking about when they're, so like, let's say they've selected Microsoft as the platform and they're picking between partners, or they haven't selected the software yet and maybe they're picking between Dynamics and Salesforce, for example. Does it change your opinion, or do you think, do you think that matters?
Probably if it's just a partner selection, there are going to be fewer of those technical questions. I still think it's a terrible way to make a decision between the platforms. And at the end of the day, if you're trying to decide between Salesforce and Dynamics, most of your answers are going to be yes, right? Like these two platforms are very similar. They can all manage your business. Like you can do it with either one. What it comes down to is the implementation and, frankly, the partner that does the implementation. And if that partner is invested in your business and wants your business to be successful, then you're going to be successful with whatever software they decide to put in for you. But if they've gone through the RFP process and they just have their list of requirements and they say, well, it's going to cost you this much money to do these set of requirements, you say, great, build me those sets of requirements and then we'll call it a day. You're going to come out the other side with something that maybe works, maybe doesn't, maybe people are excited about, probably they aren't. It's just kind of like a shot in the dark.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that the RFP process takes out of it, or if you come into those meetings with a partner, already saying like, here's what we want to do and here's the process or the steps that we want to do it, is you're taking the partner relationship truly out of it. You're not letting the company you're not allowing them to become a partner to you and letting them advise you and say, hey, here's the solution that you're trying to, the problem that you have, and here's the solution you need, or here's the outcome. I've always said that I don't want a vendor. I don't want somebody to just come in and do what I tell them to. I want somebody to come in and I want to say, here's the problem that I'm having, and come to me and say, well, here's the ways that we can solve it, or here's the outcomes that we can get to, or I can say, hey, here's the solution that I want to get to, here's what I want to be able to do in the system, how can I get there, and how do we need to incrementally get there, how can we fix that? I want somebody to partner with me and truly want my business to succeed. I don't want somebody to just come in and do what I tell them.
You don't want an order taker.
Exactly.
I don't like order taker consultants. That's not their job, right? Like that's just a support type role. Like that's not what you're hiring
not
a
project
at all. Team or a business analyst or a functional consultant to come in and do.
Right. And so I think that when you do RFPs or when you come in with those ideas already, that's the kind of relationship that you're already created, accidentally maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. I don't like being an order taker. I don't like other order takers. If you're a consultant listening to this podcast, don't be an order taker. If you have a question, ask why. Push back. It will make you a better consultant.
Absolutely.
So what else do you guys feel like an organization should look for or watch for, throughout the selection process?
So one of the things that always gets me when I am picking a partner, or people always ask me is, what is important to you about a partner? And they always bring up things like, what kind of work they've done, industries that they work with, to make sure that they've done work with similar companies. And then they always bring up the idea of geography. Oh, let's make sure that they're in the same area as you. And I always laugh at that one. I don't know if you guys always find this one kind of interesting. I do think it's important for them to have worked with similar companies so that they understand, especially if you work in like a unique industry, right? That they understand, how you guys work, especially your sales process, or if you're working with unique items inside of Dynamics and Power Platform, like field service, things like that. But the geography one makes me laugh all the time because I'm like, who cares if they're in the same city or state?
Do you care? Okay, pretend that there's not a global pandemic. Do you care about in-person time though? Like, do you care if they're willing to come on site as needed?
If you need them to come on site, you can just pay for that, I guess. And I think that you'd have to pay for them to come on site even if they were in the same city.
Well, travel costs.
Yeah, travel costs. Yeah, but I feel like that's just part of the expense of having a partner.
Yeah, and you're also probably not thinking that they're going to be there 4 days a week, every week for the whole project. Like you're probably thinking they're going to be on site for a few critical points in time, max.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that's a decision that everybody has to make. I guess looking at your project, and if you are hiring a company where you're going to have a consultant on site for, 9 months for 4 days a week, yeah, maybe geography does make sense. But if you're having a project where they're going to come out for the go live for 1 week out of the year, don't make the geography your one decision, especially when maybe the city that your company is in doesn't have a lot of partners or, enterprise, partners because your company is an enterprise company. Don't make your decision based on things like that just because that's what they're telling you. Hey, we're in your backyard. That's important. Don't make your decisions based on superficial things like that. It's okay to choose a partner outside of your geography.
Yeah, no, I agree. And everyone so like all the employees for the organization might not work there either. Like you might have a remote team, and so it doesn't, you'd have to everyone join virtually or travel in anyways, if not everyone's not there like at that physical site. Actually, I will say I slightly disagree with your industry point though. Like I do think that it's helpful to have some experience with the functionality of the industry, but I also think that there's a lot that can be learned across industries. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you are too focused, you might lose out on some of that benefit of, especially if it's industries that maybe they both use field service, or you're both B2B or B2C, and they have some general commonalities. But yeah, I feel less strongly about this, like the focus on industry.
So I shouldn't say that they should have to work only in industry. I think that they should work across industry, but I think it's helpful to understand your industry, but not solely in your industry. I think that if they were only focused on one industry, that would be a downside.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's
this is another sort of messaging difference between what Microsoft is pushing. Microsoft is very much industry specific, not necessarily like one partner, one industry, but it seems as though the Microsoft perspective is, well, if you've implemented a provider in the healthcare space and that's your industry, then every other provider will be exactly the same. And so you can just sort of replicate your work over and over again, to the degree that you should put it in AppSource and then just download it and install it and go.
That's not the way it works though. Like you could be in the same industry and the processes are different because they're different businesses.
Everybody works differently.
It's not that easy. I wish it was.
Wouldn't that be great?
We wouldn't really have jobs then if it was that easy. Just build an app and you're done. You don't have to do any configuration or customization for organization, but that's not really the case.
I was curious, Ashley, about your geography point. Does it matter if it's offshore?
Oh, that's such a good question. I've never thought that it mattered. I know other people have different opinions on that, but I think you have to find a good offshore team.
That's fair. I think as someone who has worked for a partner that has used a fair amount of offshore teams, I think having offshore resources is excellent as long as you incorporate them into the project team appropriately.
Correct.
And the way that I think about it is, it wouldn't matter if the person were in Duluth, Minnesota. As periodically I hear ads for a company that offshore to the North Shore, or if they're halfway across the globe. If they're not involved in the meetings, the requirements gathering, like the general context around the project, it's going to be really difficult for them to be successful, right? No matter where they're located. But if they're part of the team and they have the context and they know the people, then I would agree with you. It does not matter at all where those people are physically located. They can still do great work from anywhere.
I've never had an offshore team that's actually involved in the project. Have you guys seen that?
I've had the scenario both for an end user and my short stint at being a consultant.
Yeah, I've seen very successful situations where we had an onshore and an offshore team, and the customer also had their own onshore and offshore teams. And so like all four of the teams were able to sort of interact, and like the two Indian-based teams were able to interact like overnight, while the US-based resources were sleeping, and the US team would interact. It was actually worked out pretty well. But I think that's key. Like I've also seen like consultants, write up documentation, say, okay, build all this stuff, and then they just ship it to the guy who's sitting in India, and he's like, okay, I don't know why, but I guess I'm supposed to build this stuff, so I will build this stuff exactly as it is written because that is what I've been handed. And then they send it back, and the consultant in the US says, well, this is what I wrote, but this isn't what I meant. Well, how is he supposed to know that? He's halfway across the world. You didn't talk to him. So I feel like offshore resources are great, but they have to be part of the team. I don't know that I've ever seen a project go successfully that was like almost all offshore with like one person on site sending all of their work offshore. I feel like that's kind of tricky to run.
Yeah. Well, we should probably be wrapping it up. Any final points that either of you want to make?
I think this could go down a rabbit hole, but I'll just say that another thing to watch out for with partners or just keep in mind is talk to them about timelines and budgets. But we can probably talk about that on a future podcast as well. So
definitely. I think we could talk for a while on that one.
Probably. I guess my last thought is if you've gotten a bunch of different estimates and one of them is a dramatic outlier from the others, something is wrong somewhere, and it might not be the outlier. All that means is whatever you've communicated to these different companies is either not consistent in how you communicated it, or is not consistent in how they interpreted it. And so that's, I guess, I'd think of that as a red flag to say, okay, something went wrong. We should talk to everybody to make sure that we're on the same page.
And I want to say that, Merlin, I've chosen the outlier before as a partner in that scenario.
High or low?
It wasn't necessary that it was high or low. It was just that they came back with a much different approach.
Okay.
The approach was much different. The outlier, you know what I mean? The outlier approach was different. And we chose them because we went back and talked to them, everybody again, like Merlin said. And they just interpreted it much more wholly, I would say.
Yep. Doesn't mean just throw out the most expensive one or just go throw out the cheapest one. The guys clustered together might all be making the same wrong assumptions, and the one outlier is, realizing something that nobody else did. You never know. That's it.
Well, thanks, everyone. Listen to next time.
Thank you for listening to the Dynamics Hot Dish podcast. For additional content and previous episodes, check out our website at dynamicshotdish.com, follow us on Twitter at DynamicsHotDish, and subscribe to our podcast for notifications. Thanks. See you next time.